Your blood, sweat and tears don't matter anymore, Michael Harrison said, his new corner office gleaming with polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown San Francisco. I'm taking this company in a different direction. His words echoed in my mind as he delivered the impossible news. I was terminated, effective immediately. 6 years. 6 years creating the neural network algorithm that became Quantum's flagship product, the very innovation that had just earned him his CEO title, and he was throwing me out like yesterday's coffee. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, 29 years old, with a PhD in artificial intelligence from MIT, yet still living in a cramped studio apartment in the Mission District, still paying off student loans, still driving my beat-up Tesla Model 3 that I'd bought used 5 years ago. I stared at Michael Harrison, the silver-haired corporate climber who joined Quantum Dynamics just 8 months ago as Chief Operating Officer. 8 months. 8 months to study our operation, to understand our technology, to charm the board members at their golf clubs and wine tastings. 8 months to position himself as the visionary leader the company needed. The irony burned like acid in my throat. I was the one who'd conceptualized the Quantum Core AI platform, the machine learning framework that now processed 60% of all financial data analysis for Fortune 500 companies. I'd worked 16-hour days for 3 years straight, missed my grandmother's funeral because I was debugging critical neural pathways, sacrificed relationships and health to birth this technological marvel. The first version alone had generated $800 million in revenue last quarter. Pack your things, he continued, adjusting his Italian silk tie, the kind that cost more than my monthly rent. Security will escort you out in 30 minutes. He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. No explanation, no thank you, no acknowledgement that without my work, Quantum Dynamics would still be a third-tier tech company struggling to compete with the giants. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling disconnected from my body. The Quantum Core belongs to me, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. I created every line of code. I developed the algorithms. Actually, he interrupted, sliding a manila folder across his massive glass desk. According to your employment contract, all intellectual property created during your tenure belongs to Quantum Dynamics. Section 4(7), subsection B. I've had our legal team review it thoroughly. His smile was practiced, predatory. You're entitled to 2 weeks severance pay. Be grateful for that. I didn't reach for the folder. I knew what it contained. The standard contract I'd signed years ago when I was just eager to join any company that would let me work on AI. Young, naive, desperate to prove myself in a field dominated by older men with PhDs from Stanford and Harvard. The contract I'd never bothered to revisit because I believed, foolishly, that loyalty and hard work would protect me. The Singapore expansion, I said, grasping at straws. The integration with the European banking system. The R&D department needs me. The team will adapt, he finished. Innovation requires fresh perspectives, new blood. The board agrees. He stood up, signaling our meeting was over. Rachel from HR will help you with the paperwork. Rachel. Martinez hovered by his office door, holding a cardboard box that seemed absurdly small for 6 years of my life. She avoided my eyes as we walked to my desk, my usual workstation that felt like home, with its 3 monitors still displaying my latest algorithm optimization, the quantum physics equations scrawled on the whiteboard, the half-finished energy, drink that would never be finished. The open concept office had gone eerily quiet. My colleagues, my team, people I'd hired, mentored, laughed with during countless late-night debugging sessions, pretended to be absorbed in their work. Only Jin Park, my lead engineer, dared to meet my gaze. His eyes were red, whether from exhaustion or emotion I couldn't tell. He mouthed silently, "I'm sorry." I packed mechanically, the photo of me receiving the Tech Innovator of the Year award last September. My coffee mug with World's Okayest Programmer printed on it, a gift from my team. My MIT diploma, still in its original frame. The small jade elephant my mother had sent for good luck. Everything that had made this place feel like mine fit. In that pathetic cardboard box, as I waited for the elevator, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael Harrison. "We never speak about this. Severance depends on your silence." The elevator doors opened, and I saw my reflection in the polished steel, red-eyed, pale, but somehow standing straighter than I had in months, like I'd shed an invisible weight. I handed my badge to security and stepped out into the San Francisco. Morning fog. The air felt different, colder, or maybe I was just noticing it for the first time. My apartment, when I reached it, felt simultaneously too empty and too full. Empty of purpose, full of memories I couldn't escape. I set the box on my kitchen counter, next to the stack of bills I'd been ignoring because I was too busy revolutionizing financial technology to worry about my own finances. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. That first night, I did something I hadn't done since graduate school. I cried. Not the pretty, silent tears of movies, but the ugly, choking sobs of someone who'd been betrayed by the one thing they'd believed in: merit. Hard work, innovation, the American dream. My phone was silent. No calls from former colleagues, no messages of support. The tech industry had a short memory and an even shorter attention span. By tomorrow, someone else would be sitting at my desk, trying to decipher my code, unraveling 6 years of work like a knitted sweater with one loose thread. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Around midnight, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop. Muscle memory took me to my personal cloud storage, where I'd kept backups of my early research, work I'd done before joining Quantum, work they had no claim to, the foundation of what would become their flagship product. I stared at those old files, at the evolution of an idea that had started in my dorm room at MIT, evolved through my graduate thesis, and culminated in the quantum core. They had my newer work, yes. The refinements, the optimizations, the commercial applications. But they didn't have this, the pure mathematical beauty of the original concept, the spark that had ignited everything. My phone vibrated. 12:47 a.m. Unknown number. I ignored it. 3 minutes later it vibrated again. Same unknown number. This time I answered, "Dr. Chen." The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. "It's Michael Harrison. We need to talk." "It's past midnight," I said, my voice hollow, "and we have nothing to discuss." "I think we do." There was something in his tone, urgency, maybe even fear. "There's been a complication with the quantum core, something the team can't figure out. They need your help." I almost laughed. "Find someone else. Sarah, please." He'd never used my first name before. "The system is experiencing catastrophic failures. The Singapore expansion you mentioned, it launches tomorrow. If we can't fix this, then you'll lose your biggest client and probably your shiny new CEO title," I finished. "How unfortunate." "More than that," he said, his voice dropping. "The failure pattern. It could trigger a domino effect across all our implementations. Banks, investment firms, healthcare systems. The quantum core is integrated into critical infrastructure. Lives could be at risk." I sat up straighter. Lives. That changed things. What kind of failures? Prediction errors. The financial modeling is spitting out negative probabilities. The risk assessment algorithms are flagging every transaction as potentially fraudulent. It's like the system has forgotten everything you taught it. Despite everything, my mind was already working on the problem. Send me the error logs. I can't. Company policy. You'd need to come back here just for tonight. Help us fix this. After that, we can discuss. No discussions, I interrupted. I help you fix your crisis, and in return, you give me proper severance. 6 months' salary, health benefits, and you release any claim to my pre-quantum research. Silence. Then, done. How soon can you be here? 1 hour. I was already booting up my old laptop, the one with SSH access to the quantum servers. That security hadn't disabled yet. Idiots! The office was different after midnight. The soft lighting cast long shadows, making the modern furniture look like abstract sculptures. Only the engineering floor was lit up, with a skeleton crew of our best people, the ones I'd personally recruited and trained, hunched over their workstations. Michael was there too, his perfect composure cracked, no tie, shirt sleeves rolled up, looking like a man facing professional annihilation. Thank you for coming. I ignored him and went straight to work. The error logs painted a disturbing picture. The neural network was indeed failing, but not randomly. There was a pattern, a signature I recognized. When did these errors start? I asked Chen, who handed me a fresh cup of coffee without my asking. He knew how I took it. 3 days ago, he said, right after the system update you scheduled. He stopped himself. For the expansion I'll never see, I finished. What was in the update? Nothing major, Michael said quickly. Just optimization tweaks, performance improvements. I pulled up the code changes. There it was. Someone had modified my core algorithm, the heart of the system, not the elegant efficiency improvements I'd documented, but crude, ham-fisted changes that disrupted the delicate balance of the neural pathways. Who approved these changes? I demanded. Silence. Who? I repeated, my voice cutting through the tension. I did, Michael finally admitted. Our new senior lead, Chad Morrison, he's from Google. He said he could improve your code's efficiency by 20%. I actually laughed. A PhD from MIT, 6 years building the system from the ground up, and they let someone with a flashy Google resume tamper with my work. Show me his credentials. Michael pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. Stanford Masters, 5 years at Google, worked on their AI imaging project. Their AI project that was shut down for fundamental errors in image recognition. I interrupted. The one that misclassified photos and caused a PR nightmare. I didn't wait for an answer. Let me see Morrison's modifications. The code was a disaster. He'd introduced optimization techniques that worked for image processing, but were completely inappropriate for financial prediction models. He'd removed critical safeguards I'd built in, ignored the documentation I'd meticulously maintained, and worst of all, he'd fundamentally misunderstood how the neural network learned from market data. Call him in, I said. It's 2 in the morning, Michael protested. Call him, I repeated, or watch your company burn. 20 minutes later, Chad Morrison walked in, a tall, confident figure in an expensive hoodie and designer jeans, the uniform of Silicon Valley success. Dr. Chen, he said with practiced charm, I've heard so much about you, finally get to meet the legend. I didn't shake his offered hand. You destroyed my code. I optimized it, he corrected. Your approach was outdated. Too many checks. Too many redundancies. Modern AI needs to be agile, fast, efficient. Modern AI needs to be correct, I shot back. Your optimizations removed the ethical constraints I built in. The system is now making biased predictions because you eliminated the fairness algorithms. Fairness is a luxury in financial markets, he said dismissively. The goal is profit maximization. I turned to Michael. This is your vision? Profit at any cost, even if it means algorithmic bias that could discriminate against smaller investors, emerging markets, minority-owned businesses? Michael looked uncomfortable. The board wants results. The board wants results that are both profitable and ethical, I interrupted. Or they should. Do you have any idea what happens when your AI system starts discriminating? Lawsuits, regulatory investigations, loss of public trust. The SEC would shut you down so fast. We'll deal with those issues later, Chad said. First, we need to fix the immediate crisis. I looked at my former team, exhausted, terrified, caught between corporate ambition and professional integrity. I looked at Chen, whose father had immigrated from Korea to give his children better opportunities, at Maria Rodriguez, whose scholarship to Stanford had been her ticket out of poverty, at David Okonjo, who'd survived political upheaval in Nigeria, to become one of the finest engineers I knew. Here's what we're going to do, I said. I'll fix the system tonight, but not Chad's way. We're going to restore my original algorithm with improvements, fair improvements. Then I'm going to help you hire my replacement, someone who understands AI ethics, not just AI performance. That wasn't our deal, Michael started. The deal changed when I saw what you'd done to my work, I said. Take it or leave it. How many millions are you losing by the minute right now? Michael's jaw worked silently. Finally, fix it. I spent the next 6 hours in a trance-like state, fingers flying across the keyboard as I rebuilt what Chad had torn down. My team worked with me, their relief palpable as they watched the system stabilize. We added improvements, real ones, not cosmetic changes designed to impress board members who didn't understand technology. By dawn, the crisis was averted. The Singapore expansion would launch without incident. The financial predictions were accurate and unbiased. The risk assessments were nuanced and fair. Chad's optimizations were relegated to an archived branch. A cautionary tale about why you don't let Google refugees tinker with complex systems they don't understand. As the morning light filtered through the office windows, I saved my work and logged out for the last time. I'll help you interview candidates next week, I told Michael. After that, I never want to see any of you again. He nodded, defeated and grateful at once. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. I left without another word. Outside, the San Francisco dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone buzzed again. Another midnight call, but this time during daylight hours. Another unknown number. Dr. Chen? A woman's voice, professional but warm. This is Jennifer Walsh from Nova Securities. We've been following your work at Quantum. We'd like to offer you a position. Lead AI architect, your own team, your own budget, and most importantly, total creative control. I stopped walking. How much do you know about what happened? We know enough. We also know you're the best in the field, and we believe in ethical AI. What do you say? I thought about my cramped apartment, my student loans, my battered pride. I thought about Michael Harrison's midnight desperation and Chad Morrison's arrogant incompetence. I thought about all the work I had left to do, all the innovations still, waiting in my mind. I say we should talk, I said, but not about what happened at Quantum. Let's talk about the future. A new chapter was beginning, and this time I'd be writing it on my own terms. 2 weeks later, I sat in Nova Security's gleaming headquarters in Palo Alto, surrounded by the best AI minds in the industry. The such a contrast with Quantum couldn't have been starker. Here, the walls displayed equations and algorithms, not corporate platitudes about synergy and disruption. My new team assembled around a conference table that had seen real innovation, not just PowerPoint presentations. We lost 3 top candidates to Google last month, Jennifer Walsh explained, sliding her third cup of coffee across the table. They're throwing signing bonuses at anyone with AI experience. We can't compete on money alone. My team leaned forward. I'd insisted on a diverse group, veteran researchers, hungry PhDs straight from academia, and mid-career engineers tired of corporate politics. They'd all experienced variations of what I'd been through: the brilliant work, the stolen credit, the broken promises. Money isn't why we're here, I said. Show me your biggest problem. Dr. Anthony Reeves, Nova's chief technology officer, pulled up a holographic display. Market prediction accuracy has plateaued at 76%. We think it's a ceiling based on current approaches. Meanwhile, our competitors claim they're hitting 85%. I studied the data patterns, the neural network architecture they'd been using. They're lying about those numbers, I said flatly, or they're using methodologies that look impressive in demos but fail under real market stress. Can you prove that? Jennifer asked. I smiled. Watch. I connected my laptop to their system and pulled up the competitors' published research papers. Within 20 minutes, I'd identified the fatal flaw in their approach, a cherry-picked dataset that excluded market anomalies. Run their algorithm against 2020's pandemic crash data. Watch their 85% accuracy plummet to 43%. The room buzzed with energy as my team processed what I'd shown them. This wasn't just debugging. This was understanding the deeper mathematics of market behavior, the chaos theory hidden beneath the orderly equations. How do we break through the 76% ceiling? Dr. Reeves asked. By acknowledging what we don't know, I replied. Traditional AI tries to predict everything. We should build a system that knows when to say, I don't know, and still provides value to traders. Over the next month, we developed what I called the uncertainty principle algorithm. Instead of forcing predictions in volatile markets, our AI would identify confidence levels, highlight anomalies, and even flag when external factors made prediction futile. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday night when Singapore markets opened. Our system didn't just predict, it understood context. When political unrest erupted in a Southeast Asian nation, while competitors' systems struggled with conflicting signals, ours calmly noted, prediction confidence, 23%. Recommend caution. In regional energy sector trades, monitor news feeds. The accuracy didn't jump to 85%. It improved to 82%. But more importantly, our false positive rate dropped by 60%. Real traders using real money cared more about avoiding catastrophic errors than chasing impossible certainty. Success brought unexpected challenges. Silicon Valley's tech ecosystem was a small world. One evening, my phone rang with an 818 area code, Los Angeles. The voice on the other end was familiar, Chad Morrison. Sarah, it's Chad. I wanted to apologize for what happened at Quantum. It's Dr. Chen, I said coldly, and your apology is several months too late. I know. Look, I'm at a stealth startup now. Autonomous Capital, we're doing interesting work in crypto market prediction. I could really use your expertise. I almost laughed. The audacity. Find someone else to mess up your algorithms. I'm being serious. We've got $50 million in funding. Michael Harrison is our lead investor. My blood ran cold. Michael is investing in your company? He believes in my vision. Listen, I learned from my mistakes at Quantum. I want to make it right. By starting another company? With Michael's money? The pieces clicked. You're using my architecture, aren't you? The quantum core principles I developed. Public domain concepts, Sarah. You can't copyright mathematical ideas. But you can patent specific implementations. And I did. I pulled up my lawyer's emails from the previous month. Check your inbox in 5 minutes. I sent a cease and desist to Autonomous Capital's registered address. My pre-quantum research was protected, and I'd hired the best IP lawyers in Silicon Valley to prove it. Let them try to build their crypto prediction engine without my foundational work. Nina Sharma, our general counsel, reviewed the situation the next morning. They'll probably ignore the cease and desist initially. That's standard. But once they realize you have the patents, they'll have to settle or invent something from scratch, I finished. Good luck with that. But the real battle wasn't legal. It was philosophical. Michael Harrison had a vision of AI as a tool for extracting maximum profit from markets. I believed AI should democratize access to financial intelligence, helping smaller investors compete with institutional giants. Nova Securities shared my vision. We launched our platform 3 months after I joined. Instead of selling exclusively to hedge funds and banks, we offered a consumer tier. For $50 per month, individual investors could access the same AI insights as Wall Street firms paying millions in licensing fees. The tech press loved the story. Former insider takes on corporate greed, empowers the little guy. Within weeks, we had 100,000 subscribers. Within months, 500,000. Not because we promised impossible returns, but because we delivered consistent, ethical insights that actually helped people navigate complex markets. But success painted a target on our backs. The midnight calls resumed, though now they came from my former colleagues at Quantum, begging for help with their unraveling infrastructure. Michael had replaced me with 3 people, none of whom understood the system's deeper architecture. The neural networks are degrading, Jin confided during one call. Without your optimization cycles, the prediction quality drops by 2% every month. At this rate, major clients will start noticing problems in 6 months. That's not my problem anymore, Jin. I know it's not. But, he paused, Maria's pregnant. David just bought a house. If Quantum loses its major clients, the engineering division gets gutted. We'll all be out of work. Manipulative, perhaps, but also true. These weren't the executives I'd fought against. They were talented people trapped in a broken system, paying the price for management's hubris. I'll make you a deal, I told him. I'll provide consulting to fix the critical issues, not to make the system better, just to keep it stable. In exchange, I want access to all former employees who were underpaid commissions. Let them know they have grounds for a class action lawsuit. Sarah, I can't. You asked for help. Those are my terms. 2 nights later, I remotely accessed Quantum systems through a secure VPN. The degradation was worse than Jin had admitted. Core algorithms were developing feedback loops, amplifying minor errors into significant prediction deviations. I implemented patches, not innovations, just maintenance to stop the hemorrhaging. While working, I discovered something that explained the desperation in Michael's midnight calls. Quantum had sold its AI division to a private equity firm in London for $2 billion. The sale was contingent on maintaining performance metrics. If the prediction accuracy dropped below 75%, the buyers could demand a $500 million price reduction or walk away entirely. Michael hadn't been calling out of concern for lives or clients. He'd been protecting his golden parachute, but the discovery had another implication. In selling the AI division, Michael was selling technology I'd created. With my newly negotiated consulting agreement, I now had legal standing to demand my share of that $2 billion sale. Lillian Foster, my attorney from Stanford Law, smiled when I presented the case. You might be entitled to 10 to 15% of the sale price, given your role as the primary innovator. That's $480 million. I don't want hundreds of millions, I said. I want accountability. We structured the lawsuit differently. Instead of seeking massive damages for myself, I asked for 3 things: proper recognition as the lead innovator of Quantum Core, a technology fund for underpaid employees to pursue further education, and mandatory ethical AI guidelines for all Quantum contracts. The case generated national attention. CNBC featured me in a segment on AI innovation and intellectual property. TechCrunch dubbed it the billion-dollar battle for AI's soul. But the real impact came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from MIT's AI Ethics Lab reached out. Your approach to uncertainty in market prediction, it's revolutionizing how we think about AI decision-making. Would you consider joining our advisory board? I was being invited back to my alma mater, not as a struggling grad student, but as an established innovator. The irony wasn't lost on me. MIT had rejected my first research proposals as overly ambitious and commercially impractical. Meanwhile, Nova Securities thrived. We processed over $20 billion in daily trading volume, helping thousands of individual investors make informed decisions. Our ethical AI standards became industry benchmarks. Other companies began implementing similar uncertainty metrics and bias detection systems. But corporate warfare has subtle weapons. 6 months after leaving Quantum, I found my personal investment accounts frozen. My credit cards were declined at grocery stores. My apartment complex received notice that my rent had significantly increased. A warning shot from powerful enemies who still had connections. The message was clear: fall in line or face financial ruin. Instead, I doubled down. Nova Securities launched a program offering free AI tools to low-income communities, teaching financial literacy through advanced technology. We partnered with historically black colleges and universities, creating paid internships for students traditionally excluded from Silicon Valley's inner circles. The night Michael's legal team finally made contact, I was working late in Nova's lab. Their offer was simple: drop all claims, sign a new NDA, and receive a lump sum payment of $10 million. In exchange, I would never speak publicly about Quantum, never advocate for competitor rights, never share my version of what happened. Counteroffer, I told them. Double the employee education fund, implement mandatory AI ethics training for all staff, and agree to open source the basic quantum core architecture for academic research, plus $1 symbolic for me personally. That's absurd, their lead attorney sputtered. Open sourcing would cost the company hundreds of millions in potential future licensing fees, I finished, but it would advance the entire field of AI. Isn't that worth something? You're not thinking clearly. $10 million could change your life. My life already changed, I said. The question is whether you're willing to change yours. Negotiations stretched on for weeks. Headlines painted me as everything from a visionary disruptor to a vindictive ex-employee. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. I wasn't fighting just for myself anymore. This was about precedent, about whether tech companies could continue exploiting the brilliant minds that built their fortunes while hiding behind corporate structures and legal loopholes. The breakthrough came from an unexpected ally. Eric Walsh, Jennifer's cousin, and a venture capitalist with a conscience, used his connections to pressure other investors. If this industry is going to maintain public trust, he wrote in a viral Medium post, we need to start valuing innovation appropriately, whether it comes from a CEO or an employee. The post sparked a broader conversation about tech industry culture, intellectual property, and corporate responsibility. Other companies began re-evaluating their own policies. Stanford and Berkeley created new programs focusing on ethical AI development, with mandatory courses on creator rights and fair compensation. Finally, on a rainy Thursday in November, Quantum's board agreed to our terms. Not all of them. Corporate compromise never grants everything, but enough to mark a victory. $200 million would fund the Employee Education Initiative. All Quantum contracts would include ethical AI guidelines, and portions of the core architecture would be open-sourced for academic use. I kept only what I'd demanded: my one symbolic, in dollar, and the official recognition as lead innovator of quantum core. The check framed on my office wall reads, "Pay to the order of Dr. Sarah Chen, $1 and 100 for services rendered, revolutionary innovation in financial AI." The midnight calls stopped. Michael Harrison quietly stepped down as CEO, citing personal reasons. Chad Morrison's startup failed spectacularly when investors discovered they'd built their entire platform on stolen algorithms, not just mine, but patents from 3 other companies. He vanished from Silicon Valley's social circles, another cautionary tale in an industry full of cautionary tales. But the real triumph was quieter, more personal. Jin Park eventually left Quantum and joined our team at Nova. Maria Rodriguez, now raising her daughter, pioneered new work-life balance, policies that set industry standards. David Okonjo launched an AI education non-profit teaching kids in Nigeria how to code, funded by his class action settlement from Quantum. Late one night, a year after our battle ended, I found myself alone in Nova's lab, staring at lines of code that would have been impossible at Quantum. We weren't just predicting markets anymore. We were building AI systems that could help solve climate modeling challenges, optimize healthcare resource allocation, and even assist in early cancer detection through pattern recognition. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. But instead of ignoring it, I answered, "Dr. Chen, this is Marcus Thompson from the MacArthur Foundation. I'm calling about your nomination." "Nomination for what?" "The MacArthur Fellowship. For your groundbreaking work in ethical AI development and corporate accountability. Congratulations. You've been selected as a MacArthur Fellow." The prestigious Genius Grant came with no strings attached, $800,000 over 5 years to pursue whatever work I chose. But the real gift was validation, proof that fighting for principle could coexist with professional success. As I hung up, a message notification appeared on my screen. Subject: "Thank you." The sender: "Email protected." The email was simple. "What you did changed everything. Not just for us, but for everyone coming after. Sometimes the right thing and the successful thing are the same thing. Just takes the right person to prove it. JP." I saved the email in a folder labeled Reminders, because some nights, when imposter syndrome crept in or self-doubt whispered that I'd been too combative, too uncompromising, I needed to remember why the fight mattered. The tech industry still had a long way to go. Corporate greed, stolen credit, and exploitation of brilliant minds remained endemic problems. But something had shifted. Other innovators started speaking up. Lawsuits followed. Policies changed, not overnight and not completely, but progress nonetheless. 6 months after the settlement, I gave a keynote at the Global AI Ethics Summit. The audience included engineers from around the world, many of whom had experienced their own versions of what I'd endured. Young researchers in the front row took notes diligently, their eyes bright with the same passion I'd felt at their age. "Innovation isn't just about creating something new," I told them. "It's about creating the conditions where tomorrow's innovators can thrive, where their work is respected, their contributions acknowledged, and their voices heard." After the talk, a graduate student approached me, a young woman from Nigeria studying at Stanford. "Dr. Chen, I'm working on AI for agricultural development in sub-Saharan Africa, but my advisor wants to take credit as senior author on all our papers. I don't know if I should fight it or just focus on the work." I recognized myself in her uncertainty, her fear of rocking the boat, her desire to just keep creating. But I'd learned that silence serves the powerful, not the brilliant. "Fight," I told her. "Document everything. Find allies. Your work matters, and so does credit for your work. The industry will only change when we insist on better." She nodded, steeling herself for battles I hoped would be easier than mine had been. Later that evening, walking through Golden Gate Park, I reflected on the strange journey from that humiliating midnight call to this moment of relative peace. Success, I'd learned, wasn't measured just in algorithms written or deals closed or awards won. It was measured in doors opened, in precedents set, in the subtle but crucial transformation of systems that had seemed immutable. My phone buzzed one more time, another midnight call, but this time I was ready for it. This time I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. Dr. Chen, this is Rebecca Chan from Nobel Labs. We're assembling a team to tackle quantum computing, applications in financial modeling. We've heard about your work with uncertainty principles. We'd like to discuss a position. I smiled, watching the fog roll in from the Pacific Ocean, obscuring and revealing the city lights in turns. Just like uncertainty in market prediction, the future remained beautifully, productively unknown. I'm listening, I said, and meant it. The midnight calls had become invitations to shape the future, and this time I was answering on my own terms. 5 years after my battle with quantum, I stood before the United Nations AI Ethics Commission, in Geneva, representing not a corporation, but a movement. The quantum computing breakthrough at Nobel Labs had revolutionized financial modeling, but more importantly, it had opened doors to solving problems previously thought impossible: water distribution optimization, pandemic response modeling, and climate change prediction with unprecedented accuracy. Traditional economic models failed to predict the 2008 crisis, I began, my voice steady as delegates from 142 nations listened. They failed during the pandemic. They fail us daily by treating human suffering as acceptable collateral damage. The technology exists to do better. We choose not to use it. The auditorium buzzed with whispered translations. 3 years ago, such a statement would have been dismissed as naive idealism. Now, after our quantum-enhanced systems had successfully predicted and helped prevent financial contagion in Southeast Asian markets, after our algorithms had optimized vaccine distribution to save 200,000 lives, even the most hardened skeptics paid attention. But success brought scrutiny. Last week, the Wall Street Journal ran an exposé, The AI Crusader's Secret Weapon, how Dr. Sarah Chen built a tech empire on other people's IP. The article claimed I'd used knowledge gained at quantum to develop my later innovations, a carefully blunted smear campaign orchestrated by familiar enemies. Michael Harrison had resurfaced as CEO of a new venture capital firm, Tech Prime, with backing from 3 sovereign wealth funds. He'd publicly pivoted to supporting ethical AI, donating millions to think tanks and universities. But his investments told a different story. Every portfolio company he funded developed AI systems that prioritized profit metrics over social impact, market dominance over market access. The night before my UN speech, my hotel room in Geneva had received one more midnight call. The caller ID showed Unknown International. Still fighting windmills, Dr. Chen. Michael's voice carried the same condescending edge I remembered from that first termination meeting, though age had made it raspier. How did you get this number? Please, you're speaking to the UN tomorrow about regulating AI. Did you think I wouldn't be monitoring? What do you want, Michael? To offer you one final opportunity. Tech Prime is launching a $5 billion global initiative for AI development. We want you as the face of it. Chief Ethics Officer, your own budget, complete. Autonomy. The world will see you as an industry leader who evolved beyond your vendetta into constructive partnership. Autonomy with strings attached, you mean? Everything has strings, Sarah. The question is, who's pulling them? Work with us, and you can influence how AI shapes the next century from the inside. Continue your crusade, and watch others with less scrupulous ethics build the future without you. I hung up without answering, but his words echoed through my restless night. He was right about one thing. The battle for AI's soul wouldn't be won through speeches and lawsuits alone. Real power came from controlling the infrastructure, the standards, the very frameworks within which AI operated. That realization crystallized into something unexpected after my UN address. 3 national delegations approached me with an invitation: lead an international coalition to develop open-source AI standards for critical infrastructure, financial systems, healthcare, energy grids that would prioritize resilience and equity over pure efficiency. The offer represented everything I'd fought for: transparency, accessibility, and ethics as default values rather than expensive add-ons. But it also meant leaving Nobel Labs, my team, my carefully built sanctuary. "Take it," Jennifer Walsh advised, during a video call from Nova Securities. Our company had grown beyond anything we'd imagined, now employing over 5,000 people globally with offices on 6 continents. "We can survive without you here. The mission can't survive without you there." So I accepted, relocating to Brussels to coordinate the Global AI Standards Initiative. The irony struck me during that first week. 5 years ago, I couldn't get Michael Harrison to respond to my emails. Now, world leaders sought my input on reshaping the global economy's technological backbone. But institutional power battles, differently than corporate ones. Instead of termination meetings and cease and desist letters, these opponents wielded regulatory capture, astroturfing campaigns, and the slow-motion warfare of bureaucratic obstruction. Michael had positioned himself one step ahead. Tech Prime's sudden ethical pivot earned him advisory roles with 12 national governments. His companies supplied AI systems to development banks, insurance consortiums, and healthcare providers, all potential stakeholders in any global standards I proposed. He'd learned from our first conflict: better to co-opt the language of ethics than oppose it directly. Our first major confrontation came over the Global Transparency Protocol. I proposed requiring AI systems managing critical infrastructure to expose their decision-making processes in human-understandable formats. Banks could no longer hide predatory lending algorithms behind claims of proprietary technology. Healthcare systems would need to explain why their AI denied coverage. Claims. The tech industry mobilized massively against this. Michael led the charge through seemingly independent organizations: the Center for Innovation Freedom, the Alliance for Competitive Technology, the Global Business Council on AI. Each published reports warning that transparency would stifle innovation, expose companies to lawsuits, and give advantages to authoritarian regimes with fewer regulations. Behind the scenes, the pressure intensified. Some nights I'd return to my Brussels apartment to find dead rats in my mailbox. My social media accounts were flooded with bot-generated harassment. Anonymous emails detailed my daily routines: the cafes I visited, the routes I took to work. Not quite threats, but messages: "We're watching, we can reach you." What they didn't expect was that this intimidation would strengthen global resolve rather than weaken mine. The attacks were too coordinated, too parallel, across multiple countries, suggesting resource levels only major tech corporations possessed. Journalists investigating the harassment uncovered a web of shell companies traced back to tech primes, communication firms. The attempted silencing became the story. Privacy advocates, civil rights organizations, and international development groups rallied to defend the Standards Initiative. The European Parliament fast-tracked legislation supporting transparency requirements. Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry announced similar measures. Even American lawmakers, typically cautious about regulating tech, began introducing bipartisan bills. Michael responded with what he called the Rapid Innovation Challenge. Tech Prime would award $2 billion in grants to AI startups that could prove their technologies would be crippled by transparency requirements. It was gaslighting at a global scale, positioning necessary accountability as innovation-killing regulation. But I'd learned to leverage powerful allies. Dr. Rajesh Patel, now Secretary General of the International Telecommunications Union, had witnessed my battle with quantum firsthand during his tenure at Nova Security's Regulatory Board. We regulate electrical standards, nuclear safety, aviation protocols, he noted during a press conference I'll never forget. Why should AI be different? Dr. Chen isn't attacking innovation. She's preventing Chernobyl. Org. The metaphor stuck. Public imagination grasped intuitively what tech executives denied. AI systems making life and death decisions required the same safety standards as nuclear reactors. Media coverage shifted from regulation versus innovation to necessary precautions versus reckless endangerment. That shift brought Michael to propose a private meeting. We met at a neutral location, the CERN facility outside Geneva, surrounded by the infrastructure for peering into the universe's fundamental nature. The symbolism felt appropriate. We were negotiating the fundamental rules of humanity's digital infrastructure. Your transparency requirements will cost the industry $100 billion in implementation, he began, spreading financial projections across the table. Your opacity costs society immeasurably more, I countered. Algorithmic bias in hiring costs, qualified people jobs, predatory algorithms extract wealth from vulnerable communities. Medical AI denying coverage causes preventable deaths. He studied me across the polished table, older but still calculating, still certain of his power to shape outcomes. You've grown more sophisticated since our first meeting. I've grown more necessary, I corrected. Indeed, which is why I'm offering real compromise this time. Voluntary transparency for high-impact systems, industry-led standards development, gradual implementation schedules, your core principles achieved without decimating the economy. I considered this. The offer held genuine merit. Better to have industry partnership than perpetual opposition. But experience had taught me to examine carefully what compliance mechanisms these proposals included. Show me the enforcement language, I said. His hesitation lasted only a moment. We'd create an independent oversight board, industry experts, academics, government representatives, with you funding the secretariat, I assume, selecting the independent experts. His smile hardened. You still see enemies everywhere. I see patterns everywhere. You taught me that. The meeting ended without agreement, but something had shifted in our dynamic. We now operated on the same playing field, speaking the same language of global policy and systemic change. The midnight calls persisted, but evolved into something almost like professional consultation. One night, 3 months after CERN, he called with genuine urgency. Tech Prime's facial recognition system just caused a diplomatic incident. Misidentified 15 diplomats as criminal suspects at a G20 summit. Your transparency protocols would have caught this during testing. I need your help. Hire a PR firm. Sarah, this will set back AI adoption in international relations by a decade. China is already threatening to ban all American AI companies from their markets. This hurts everyone. I exhaled slowly. Send me the incident report. I'll review it. If I find your system had sufficient internal testing and this was genuinely unforeseeable, I'll issue a statement. If I find negligence... There was negligence, he admitted immediately. We prioritized speed to market. The training data was skewed. We knew it, but thought the diplomatic prototype would be low risk. The admission transformed everything. For the first time, Michael was acknowledging the very dangers I'd been warning about, was asking for help, not to save face, but potentially to save his company's entire business model. I spent 72 sleepless hours analyzing Tech Prime systems. The negligence ran deeper than facial recognition bias. Their underlying architecture treated accuracy as optional for low-risk applications, a categorization applied suspiciously to products serving governments with poor human rights records. My report was devastating, but included remediation protocols. I proposed a 6-month intensive audit of all tech prime systems, supervised by an international team, not just to fix current problems, but to prevent future incidents. The cost would be astronomical, the reputational damage significant, Michael called after reading my recommendations. This essentially gives you oversight of my entire operation. It gives the international community oversight. I'm just the messenger. Silence stretched between us. If I agree to this, he finally said, I want something in return. You're in no position to negotiate. I'm in the position of controlling 40% of global AI infrastructure deployments. If tech prime collapses, the resulting chaos damages the very standards you're trying to establish. Be realistic. What do I get for reforming rather than fighting? I'd prepared for this moment. Full implementation of our transparency standards across all tech prime operations. Complete data access for the International AI Standards Commission and... I paused for effect. You become our test case. Show the world that even the most powerful AI corporation can operate ethically and profitably. Prove us right instead of letting your collapse prove us wrong. You want me to become a model ethical AI company? The incredulity in his voice made me smile. I want you to choose which legacy history remembers, the executive who fought accountability at every turn, or the one who pioneered responsible AI at scale. 6 months later, Tech Prime announced comprehensive reforms. Michael himself testified before multiple national legislatures supporting transparency requirements. His conversion felt cynical, driven by survival rather than conviction. But cynical sustainability beats idealistic collapse. The transformation rippled outward. Other tech giants, watching Tech Prime surprisingly thrive under new standards, began voluntary compliance. Apple announced radical algorithmic transparency in iOS. Google committed to open-sourcing key fairness libraries. Microsoft launched accessible AI ethics training for all employees. What started as punishment began yielding unexpected innovations. Companies competing on ethical metrics developed better solutions. Transparent algorithms created new trust relationships with users. Fair AI systems discovered profitable markets that exploitive ones had overlooked. By year's end, global AI investment under ethical guidelines reached $2 trillion. Unemployment didn't spike as critics predicted. Instead, ethical AI created new job categories: algorithmic auditors, bias detection specialists, AI explainability experts. The economy didn't collapse, it evolved. At the World Economic Forum, I shared a panel with Michael. The moderator asked about our historical conflict. I chose words carefully. Mr. Harrison represents what's possible when power confronts accountability and chooses transformation over entrenchment. Our disagreement produced better outcomes than continued agreement would have. Michael, for his part, spoke of learning through necessary conflict and the privilege of second chances earned through real change. But our biggest breakthrough came quietly in an unscheduled sidebar during the forum. A young entrepreneur approached our table, Zara Okafor from Nigeria, whose startup had used our open AI standards to develop agricultural technology serving 2 million small farms. 5 years ago, Dr. Chen's stories inspired me to study AI ethics, she said. Now we're predicting crop yields, optimizing water usage, helping farmers escape poverty. Your fight made space for innovations that actually matter. After she left, Michael turned to me. I spent years thinking you were my enemy. You weren't mine, I replied. You were the incarnation of a system that needed changing. And now you're proof that systems can change when individuals choose to. We sat watching the Swiss Alps through the conference center's windows, two former adversaries who'd discovered that the most efficient path forward often winds through unexpected alliances. The midnight calls had become strategic consultations. Former enemies had evolved into complex allies, working toward a future neither had imagined alone. 6 months after Davos, I received a package at my Brussels office. Inside, my original severance check from Quantum uncashed, with a note, "Some debts require compound interest, MH." Beneath it lay a $10 million contribution to the Global AI Education Fund, supporting AI literacy in developing nations. On the memo line, "Investment in actual future." I called him that night, not midnight, but a civilized afternoon hour. "The check is symbolic," I said. "I don't need your money." "The symbolism is the point," he replied. "That check represented everything wrong with our industry. Now it funds everything right we're trying to build." We spoke longer than we ever had before, not about algorithms or ethics, but about mistakes that teach better than successes ever could, about how humility often arrives freight-trained rather than invited, about legacy being written forward, not backward. The conversation ended when my UN colleagues arrived for a strategy session about our next initiative, using AI to model and implement universal basic infrastructure globally. Michael wished us well before disconnecting. As my team spread architectural plans across the conference room, literally blueprinting humanity's connected future, I realized that the midnight calls had evolved into something I'd never expected, harbingers of hope. Because sometimes the most transformative alliances emerge not despite conflict, but because of it. Sometimes yesterday's adversaries become tomorrow's allies, not through forgetting past battles, but through understanding why those battles mattered enough to fight. And sometimes, just sometimes, the future requires both the idealists and the pragmatists, both the disruptors and the reformers, to build something neither could create alone. The work continued. The midnight calls persisted. But now they came from allies across the globe, building this new architecture of accountability, one algorithm at a time. The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in Beijing. Not midnight anymore. Time. Zones had shifted as our mission expanded across continents. Li Wei's voice crackled through the satellite connection. "Dr. Chen, I think I've found something impossible." 2 years into our global AI infrastructure project, we'd uncovered patterns suggesting that rural villages in China's Sichuan province were achieving anomalous quantum computing results using modified farm equipment. It defied everything we understood about information processing requirements. "Define impossible," I replied, already packing my laptop. Brussels' comfortable office felt suddenly constraining. They're solving climate prediction algorithms that require supercomputers, using bicycle parts and agricultural sensors. Their mathematician, Professor Tang. He's never been to university, but he's published quantum theory papers that cite works he couldn't have accessed. The connection speeds there barely reach 3G. I booked a flight within the hour. The Global AI Standards Initiative had given me resources to investigate such phenomena, technological innovations emerging from unexpected corners of the world that challenged our assumptions about who could develop advanced AI systems. The village of Longhe appeared on Google Maps as a small cluster of buildings surrounded by terraced rice fields. But as our helicopter descended, I saw something extraordinary. Geometric patterns carved into the fields themselves, arranged in fractals that suggested mathematical sophistication far beyond aesthetic agriculture. Professor Tang met us at the village center, a man in his 60s wearing traditional farming clothes, but speaking in precise mathematical terms. "Welcome, Dr. Chen. I've long admired your work on uncertainty principles." "How did you hear about that?" The nearest library was 200 miles away, past mountains that blocked most cellular signals. He led us to what looked like an abandoned schoolhouse. Inside, the walls were covered floor to ceiling with equations. Some I recognized: quantum field theory, complex analysis. Others appeared completely novel, using notation I'd never encountered. We developed our own mathematical language, he explained. When you can't access the global academic community, you must create local solutions to universal problems. His quantum computer was a marvel of resourcefulness. Old smartphone screens arranged in precise geometric patterns, connected by wiring salvaged from discarded electronics. Solar panels from a defunct government project powered the system. The cooling mechanism used an underground spring network that predated the village itself. We can only run calculations at specific times, he continued, pointing to a calendar marked with complex astronomical notations. Earth's magnetic field fluctuations create optimal conditions 4 hours per month. We've learned to work within these constraints. I spent 3 days examining their system. The mathematics were genuinely innovative. They'd independently developed quantum algorithms that paralleled discoveries from MIT and Oxford, but adapted for extreme resource constraints. When I asked about their motivation, Professor Tang walked me to the edge of the fields. 3 years ago, flooding destroyed everything. Traditional prediction models said it would never happen here. Government resources went elsewhere. 87. Families lost everything. He pointed to the geometric patterns in the fields. We decided knowledge itself needed to change. Not just access to knowledge, the fundamental ways we create it. That night, we ran their system during optimal conditions. Their impossible quantum calculations helped model local flood patterns with accuracy that rivaled systems costing millions. But more remarkably, they developed this independently, driven by necessity rather than academic curiosity. Back in Brussels, I presented the Longue discovery to the United Nations Technical Council. The implications challenged every assumption about technological progress, that it required massive infrastructure, academic credentials, or connection to global networks. These farmers had revolutionized quantum computing using principles of local resource optimization that theoretical papers never considered necessary. We need to replicate this model, I argued. Not the specific technology, but the philosophy, making AI innovation accessible to communities facing real challenges, regardless of their formal education or infrastructure. The Council approved Project Dandelion, seed funding and resources. For grassroots AI innovation in communities facing critical challenges, no strings attached, just support for local genius we'd been overlooking. The project attracted attention I hadn't anticipated. Michael Harrison called with an unexpected proposal. Tech Prime wants to partner with Project Dandelion, not as funders, as learners. You think your engineers need to learn quantum computing from farmers? I think our entire industry needs to learn humility from innovators who solve real problems without assuming they need permission from Silicon Valley. His support proved valuable. TechPrime engineers began 6-month rotations in Project Dandelion communities, learning to build systems from local materials, to design for conditions they'd never imagined. Some returned changed, abandoning high-paying positions to establish local AI development centers in their home regions, but success created unexpected challenges. As Project Dandelion gained prominence, communities began experiencing innovation tourists, wealthy technologists seeking inspiration without contributing anything meaningful. Worse, some attempted to patent traditional knowledge, claiming to discover local innovations. The turning point came in Bogotá, Colombia, where a favela community had developed an AI system for water distribution using discarded smartphones and mesh networks. A Silicon Valley startup tried to patent their mesh protocol as novel resource allocation optimization, threatening to sue the community for using their own innovation. I flew to Colombia with a team of lawyers and engineers. The community leader, Maria Sandoval, welcomed us in the community center, a renovated school bus that served as both meeting hall and distributed computing center. Children did homework while their tablets contributed processing power to the village's AI system. They say we stole their idea, Maria explained, but we've been running this system for 18 months. Our children learned to code by solving real problems, clean water, fair distribution, preventing conflicts. Now lawyers say we need permission to help ourselves? The legal battle made global headlines. I testified via video link before Colombia's Intellectual Property Court, explaining how indigenous and local knowledge created by communities solving immediate problems deserved protection from appropriation. When a community innovates out of necessity, I argued, they create not just technology, but new frameworks for understanding problems we all face. Allowing outsiders to patent these innovations doesn't just steal ideas. It colonizes necessity itself. The court ruled in favor of the community, but more importantly, the case catalyzed international discussion about protecting grassroots innovation. The UN began drafting protocols for community technology rights, legal frameworks preventing large corporations from appropriating locally developed solutions. 6 months later, I stood in a former weapons factory in Detroit that had been converted into the world's first global innovation seminary. Former auto workers learned quantum computing alongside PhDs from MIT. Teenagers from Brazil taught water purification algorithms to IBM researchers. The midnight calls now came from a network spanning 142 countries, sharing breakthroughs that challenged every accepted theory about how innovation happens. But the greatest transformation happened where I least expected it. Michael Harrison announced TechPrime would become a certified B Corporation, restructuring itself to balance profit with social impact. More surprisingly, he sold a controlling stake to a coalition of the communities TechPrime had learned from through Project Dandelion. Control should belong to those who contributed wisdom, he explained during a video conference that felt nothing like our adversarial calls from years past. Western business schools taught us to extract knowledge. These communities taught us to exchange it. Skeptics called it a publicity stunt, but the numbers told a different story. TechPrime's valuation under distributed community ownership reached record highs. Innovation accelerated when development centers shifted from seeking profit maxima to solving challenge maxima. Talent retention soared when employees worked directly with the communities their products served. The transformation spread industry-wide. Companies began establishing necessity partnerships with communities facing urgent challenges. The result wasn't charity. It was revolutionary R&D. Problems that stumped traditional research yielded to local expertise, combined with global resources. In Copenhagen at the Global AI Ethics Summit, I found myself keynoting alongside unexpected co-presenters, Professor Tang from Longhai, Maria Sandoval from Bogotá, and Michael Harrison. Our panel, The Death of Silicon Valley Supremacy and the Birth of Distributed Excellence. 5 years ago, Dr. Chen and I were adversaries, Michael opened. Today, we collaborate not as reformed enemies, but as students learning from each other. The real discovery wasn't quantum computing or water distribution. It was humility. Professor Tang spoke next, his words translated for the global audience. In our village we have a saying, the river that only knows one direction soon dries up. Technology creates meaning through many currents flowing together. Maria addressed the industry leaders present. You've spent billions seeking innovation in identical conference rooms. Meanwhile, necessity teaches quantum mechanics to farmers and coding to children. The future you seek is already teaching itself. My conclusion: aim to synthesize our message. We are witnessing the democratization of impossibility. When we remove the barriers between necessity and knowledge, between local wisdom and global resources, we don't just solve problems, we redefine what's possible. The standing ovation continued for several minutes, but the real validation came afterward, in private conversations with CEOs and ministers who'd scoffed at our proposals just years before. Now they sought partnerships, advice, transformation. That evening, as the Copenhagen skyline blazed with sunset, Michael approached me on the conference center balcony. "Remember when you told me the fastest way up wasn't cutting corners? I remember you ignoring me." He laughed, genuinely. "Sometimes the student needs to fail the test to understand why the lesson mattered. You didn't just change an industry. You changed my mind about what minds can change." Our conversation was interrupted by Li Wei's arrival. She'd just returned from establishing Project Dandelion's first space-based initiative, using CubeSats to connect isolated communities to global knowledge networks. "Dr. Chen, the orbital tests are complete. Nomadic shepherds in Mongolia can now contribute to quantum encryption research in real time. And learn from it," I added, understanding now that the exchange flowed both ways. 6 months later, standing in the restored Quantum Dynamics headquarters, now renamed the Quantum Commons, a non-profit dedicated to open-source AI development, I addressed an audience that would have seemed impossible years ago. Former employees who'd suffered under the old regime, communities that had contributed breakthrough innovations, industry leaders who'd learned to listen rather than extract. 7 years ago in this building, I was fired for taking one day to pursue my future, I began. That firing led to legal battles, industry transformation, and ultimately to standing here as we launch the next phase of technological evolution. The audience included Jin Park, now Chief Technology Officer of Quantum Commons, Maria Sandoval, heading the new Community Innovation Division. Even Chad Morrison, who'd spent 3 years teaching coding to underserved communities as part of his rehabilitation, a man transformed by genuine service rather than corporate positioning. But this story isn't about my journey from fired employee to global advocate, I continued. It's about every innovator whose ideas were dismissed, every community whose wisdom was ignored, every person told their problems weren't sophisticated enough to deserve advanced solutions. I clicked through a presentation showing our network's achievements. 17,000 local AI innovations protecting 3 million people from climate disasters. Quantum algorithms developed by indigenous mathematicians revolutionizing weather prediction. Former janitors becoming leading AI theorists through programs that recognize talent over credentials. The midnight calls that began in fear evolved into conversations about possibility. The legal battles that sought to silence transformation amplified the need for change. Every obstacle we faced taught us something about the system we needed to replace. Professor Tang's virtual presence from Longhe Village appeared on screen. "Dr. Chen, your fight made space for thousands of fights. Thank you for showing us that the permission we thought we needed, we already possessed." As the presentation concluded, I revealed our largest initiative yet, the Knowledge Liberation Protocol. We were open sourcing not just technology, but the entire framework for community-driven innovation. Any group facing challenges could access resources, expertise, and legal protection to develop their own solutions. We're not ending corporate AI development, I clarified. We're ending its monopoly on defining what counts as intelligence. The farmer solving flooding problems, the teenager optimizing mesh networks, the grandmother teaching coding through storytelling. They are the future of AI. We're simply ensuring they have the resources to prove it. The applause seemed to echo from that first standing ovation in Copenhagen, building to something that felt like institutional change, becoming inevitable rather than aspirational. That night, I received a call at a reasonable hour from Michael. "Your midnight call revolution has ended the reign of midnight itself," he joked. "Everything's becoming transparent, accountable, visible in daylight." "Except the work," I replied. "That continues around the clock." "Indeed it does," he agreed. "And tomorrow Tech Prime launches our Innovation Reparations Program. We're transferring intellectual property rights for community-inspired innovations back to their origins. No lawsuits, no battles, just acknowledgement that our wealth was built on unacknowledged wisdom." I smiled, remembering his words from years ago about everyone having strings. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing," he said simply. "Maybe. That's the most revolutionary innovation of all." After ending the call, I walked to my apartment window overlooking Brussels' illuminated streets. 7 years of transformation crystallized in that view, from a fired employee fighting for recognition to a catalyst for reimagining how human knowledge creates technology's future. The midnight calls had become daylight collaboration. Former enemies had evolved into complex allies. Individual battles had seeded global transformation. And somewhere, in a village being transformed by necessity, a farmer was probably awake, using quantum principles to solve tomorrow's challenges today. My phone buzzed one more time, a message from the MacArthur Foundation. They were creating a new fellowship category, Community Innovation Catalysts. The first cohort would include 5 recipients: Maria from Bogotá, Professor Tang from Longhe, Li Wei from our infrastructure project, Jin Park for corporate transformation, and myself for pattern recognition that changed patterns of power. The award ceremony would be in San Francisco, where my journey had begun with that humiliating termination meeting. Full circle, except the circle had expanded to encompass millions of innovators who'd been circling outside the walls of traditional power. I began drafting my acceptance speech, but stopped. The right words would come from listening to the communities we'd empowered, from understanding that the most powerful innovations didn't come from individual genius, but from collective necessity, transforming into shared wisdom. The midnight of inequality was ending, and in the dawning light of distributed excellence, every phone call, every conversation, every connection carried the potential to change not just careers, but the course of human technological development itself. Sometimes the fight that matters isn't the one you choose. Sometimes it's the one that chooses you, calling at midnight, demanding you become the person bold enough to reshape the system that sought to break you. And sometimes, just sometimes, the call you answer in darkness becomes the dawn you create. For millions following in your footsteps, each carrying their own impossible innovations, their own quantum solutions to problems the world hasn't even recognized yet. The revolution, it turned out, was always meant to be a collaboration. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.